I have been so afraid to make a video about this because I didn't. I'm hoping that there will be at least some views, some people who care or get something useful from this. And also because I was absolutely petrified to talk about it in the past tense and feel like I'm jinxing it since it's not really over. But I have had the worst summer of my life and the worst health problems to date. And it was all uncharted territory for me because I've never had a very severe respiratory illness before, and especially not two at once, compounded with a multitude of secondary infections. And I already had an experience of COVID back in 2020, but it was nothing like this experience. And we all know COVID can do damn near anything. So that's not news. It's not like, oh, here's my COVID story, and by the way, it sucked, since we all know COVID can be the worst illness of your life for a lot of people, even if you're not with pre-existing conditions. But I got another virus on top of COVID within a week of getting COVID, and it's called RSV, or Respiratory Syncytial Virus. I had heard of it in the news, especially causing severe pediatric illness. There had been an uptick of RSV cases in America and surges of it in Oregon, where I live. But I didn't know much about it. I just sort of factored it in that it's one of those things that's affecting families and small children, and hospitals are not used to dealing with this level of RSV surge and this amount of very sick children. So I had heard of it, but I didn't know at the time that that's what I had as well. I was still figuring out if I had COVID. But around the start of July, my boyfriend got extremely sick, and we didn't know what was wrong with him. He took a COVID home test, and it was negative, but he had all sorts of severe complications. He had a double middle ear infection, and he's not prone to those since childhood. He had to go to urgent care several times, and he's not prone to getting really violently ill, and I had never seen him sicker. He just could not stop complaining about the extreme pressure in his ears and just the severity of the infection. He had to try several times for antibiotics because he wasn't getting them. Doctors are, these days prone to avoiding antibiotics and all that, but he was sick, really sick before me, and I had not been severely ill from a virus in years. I had only been struggling with urinary tract infections and stuff, but I had been fairly well for a while, and I'd gotten cocky thinking, if I get a new flu of some sort, I'm only going to get so sick, because flus in general have only ever made me so sick. But I either caught what he had or caught COVID from a dentist's office, because I went around July 18th to the dentist's, and there were a lot of sick people in the office. People are not going to cancel their dental appointments even if they have COVID or the flu or something, because it takes long enough to get your dental appointments. So I wound up sick after the dental appointment, and I remember how all this started for me. I kept a log, and it's creepy looking back at the log now, because at the time I remembered every detail, and then as I started to get better, I just wanted to forget everything. But around July 20th, I was in the grocery store. I always wear my mask in the grocery store, but all of a sudden I had this corkscrew cough that hit me like a ton of bricks, and I had the worst coughing fit, and people were staring, because you look like a piece of crap hacking like that in the grocery store, even if you're wearing a mask. And the coughing fit was so severe, I did wet myself a little. I was like, what the hell was that? And it was really weird. And I got back and I thought, man, that's really bizarre. And then I felt okay for the next couple days, but I was starting to get tired. And then around July 24th, I got a really bad sore throat. Like, it went from 0 to 10 really fast. And I thought, okay, I'm probably coming down with a flu. Like, I always can tell the difference because of all my throat problems. I thought, because it's already affecting my tonsils, it's probably going to be a flu. Because from the start of the day to the end of the day, it got really, really intense to where I could barely swallow. And I remember that evening, it was all this, terrible summer heat. And I'd been going for really long walks every day. I had gotten strong enough to be able to go for like 4 or 5 mile walks. And I thought, screw it, I'm just going to go for a walk. But I had this weird feeling while I was walking with my sore throat. This is going to be my last walk for a while. And like by the middle of my walk, I just sort of sat on a brick wall and I had this really bad feeling. I thought, this is probably going to be the last walk in a really long time. I just had a very ominous feeling. And I went to sleep and I had this really creepy dream that I was in a hospital and I had this like rare illness and no one knew what was wrong with me. And I woke up to incredible pressure in my ears. It felt like the worst ear infection of my life. And it was very bizarre. And I'd had very severe middle ear infections as a child, but the pressure in my head felt like it was going to explode. It felt like my head was in a vice. It was really powerful. And I knew I had a really high fever because I've had sepsis before, and I've had fevers that spike at 104, but only when I've been dangerously ill, like a very bad kidney infection or with sepsis. So I knew I had a bad fever. And my ears are ringing. I slowly kind of climb out of bed and sounds are all distorted. I grab my thermometer and my temperature is 103.8. And I remember this because it was Sunday into Monday. And I thought, oh my God, because I'm going to have to get to urgent care. I didn't know why. I just thought a fever this high, since I'm not prone to fevers this high unless something's really wrong, I thought I've got to get to urgent care. My mind wasn't working too well, so I thought maybe I wasn't coming down with something. Maybe the tonsils are referred pain and I've got a really severe ear infection. So I took Tylenol and put ice all over myself and made a couple really weird videos while I was waiting for my fever to break, just making not lots of sense, talking about Ebola. I just realized if I was one of those folks who got Ebola, I would definitely die. When you get sick with that, if you're lucky, you get placed in the little quarantine area, and if you're lucky, someone will check on you and bring you water and antipyretics and stuff. But I'm over here with all the drugs, ice, cats, AC, fans, hydration, and I'm ready to write my fucking will. And because, I've always been interested in virology, but mostly as a person, a bystander, not like I want to be really sick and feel what it feels like. But I thought, okay, I've got something really bad, either an infection that's really bad or a virus that's really bad, but I'm not sure what. Because the first time I had COVID was nothing like this, but it was like this time. The next day I go to urgent care, and it was jam-packed Monday morning, and the wait was so long. They said, you're going to have to go home and come back when we actually have space for you. So I kept coming back to the apartment and then waiting to be told when I'm supposed to go back. And I never got a text saying to come back. So eventually I went back anyway, hoping that they could help me. And eventually they did see me, but they didn't do anything for me. They said, they looked in my ears. They said, you don't have an ear infection. You must be coming down with something. They gave me a COVID test, and the stupid nasal swab test was negative, even though I did have COVID at that point. So obviously those aren't hellishly reliable. But I went back. The next day it moved into my nose, and there was no tremendous fever anymore. Then it started to feel like a normal flu. It was just sneezing, coughing, feeling like crap. Wednesday was pretty similar, but then something changed mid-Wednesday into Thursday. And I think this is where I came down with RSV, because when I was in urgent care on Monday for many, many hours, I was sandwiched between families with a lot of sick kids. And my boyfriend may have also had RSV at the time, and he was driving me to and from urgent care. He was still sick, getting over what he had, whatever he had. We still don't know if it was COVID or RSV or both. But he was still sick, and I was around him, and I was around all these sick kids. And sometime on Thursday, it felt for all the world like a second virus was on board. And I'm very, painfully self-aware. So I knew something else had just climbed on board, because the sore throat had gone into remission basically, and then it came back with a vengeance, a very, very terrible vengeance. And it went from like, I can take my over-the-counter pain medicine to I'm taking my PRN pain medicine and it's not enough, to I'm grabbing my emergency supply of Percocet and it's not enough. And by Friday, I'm coughing a lot and I'm looking at my tonsils and they're huge. And I thought, okay, I think I probably have a throat infection. And I try to ride it out for one more day, but the cough is getting really, really bad. And the tonsils are getting so huge, I can't eat food. I've barely eaten or slept all week. I'm beyond miserable. So on Saturday, I spend the day in urgent care again. And they were reluctant to give me an antibiotic for the tonsils. And I begged for a strep swab and a throat culture. And when the strep swab came back, by the very end of the day, after spending this whole time in urgent care, they see, oh, you do have strep throat in addition to whatever else is going on. And then they gave me another COVID test, and the second COVID test was positive. So I now know I have strep throat and COVID. So they gave me an antibiotic for the strep throat and sent me home. And no sooner had I gotten back from urgent care after spending the whole day there, like maybe noon to 10 p.m., just to get seen, just to beg for an antibiotic. Then I started having my eye drain, and my eye was very, very bloodshot. And it went from a little gunk in my eye to within a few hours. Like by midnight, my eye was suppurating, terrible colors, green, yellow, draining, swelling shut. It was my right eye to start with. And it got excruciatingly painful. It felt like someone was jamming needles into the area behind my eye. So I thought, oh, this is really bad. And at first I was trying to write it out thinking, all right, maybe some gunk from my nose has moved into my eye and this is like a drainage issue. But by maybe 1 a.m, I was in intense pain and I could not see out of my right eye, and I got really scared. So I woke up my boyfriend. I said, I think we have to go to the ER. Something is really wrong with my eye. Both of us, he had barely slept in weeks because he had just gotten done being seriously ill. And then I have not slept more than maybe like 1 hour at a time all week. So we've been up all day of this ordeal in urgent care, but then I really do have to go to the ER during the night. And it couldn't wait till the morning. The eye, I'd never lost vision like that. I've had eye infections before. I've had conjunctivitis and bacterial infections of my eye before, but it had never escalated that quickly. I thought something is seriously wrong with my eye. So we rushed to the ER, and I'd always said I'm never going to go back to this hospital unless it's life or death. But I had a feeling whatever bacteria is infesting my eye this badly could travel pretty quickly. And it's my eye. I don't have a choice. So we're there. We have the par for the course terrible experience at that hospital. There were people violent in the lobby. There were people getting thrown out. There were very sad situations with homeless people with nowhere else to go. And as people who watch my channel might know, I have a lot of empathy for homeless people and a lot of anger towards the community here because they are not being supported or helped in any way that is even the bare minimum. So we're sandwiched, my boyfriend and I are sandwiched against a wall of, people in various states of very sick, waiting to get seen. And as you might guess, we're there waiting all night to get seen. And there's this whole thing that takes forever while they're trying to get this homeless lady out of the lobby that's begging to not leave because she has nowhere else to go. It was just awful. It just like at that point, things started feeling really out of control, really upsetting and really surreal. Because it went from feeling like this is all going to be over soon to like, I just got a sinking feeling like I'm not going to be done with this anytime soon. And that was a really terrible feeling. So eventually towards, I think 5:30 in the morning, I get seen by a doctor. He does some sort of test with the back of my eye and checks for damage in my eye. and determines it's a bacterial infection. It later turned out that the strep bacteria had moved into my right eye. So I had strep throat and strep eye, which I didn't even know until then was a thing. And I did get the really bad feeling like, what could be infesting me so badly that I'm getting all of these rather serious secondary infections? Because, we know COVID can do a lot of weird things. But I got thinking about my boyfriend and his double middle ear infection, and now me with this. RSV wasn't on my mind yet. I just thought, what the hell is going on? So what really sucked about the whole ER experience was previously in the ER, when I had been there for bacterial conjunctivitis, they start me on the antibiotic regimen while I'm there and make sure that my eye is tolerating it well and that I don't have a bad reaction, and send me home with more of that antibiotic, because they used to have an open in-house pharmacy that was always open. In fact, when I studied to be a pharmacy technician at the hospital pharmacy level, my dream job was going to be an overnight hospital pharmacy staff making the medication preparations and dispensing medicines in the overnight. Even at that particular hospital, that was what I used to think I wanted to do. But I believe since COVID, that hospital and most hospitals around here have been so understaffed that that's not a thing anymore. They don't have the medications on site. They don't have the pharmacy staffing on site at all hours. So they don't have the medication to just give you. They're not like, here you go, or here's your bill for it, or anything like that. It's not a transaction you can do. So the doctor's like, all right, I'm going to prescribe this and you can go pick it up when your local pharmacy opens. And I was like, oh, great. Because the Kaiser Permanente pharmacy doesn't open until 10 a.m. So we've effectively been up for like several days straight at this point, and in misery. So then when I get done with the hospital, that's when my cough goes from like, this is a really shitty cough, to this cough is out of control. Like if you've ever had a cough where you have that really strong urge to cough and you're just like, oh, this sucks. And then it just becomes spastic. Like you have zero control over how much you're coughing. You have absolutely zero ability to stop it. And it's not responding to any of your syrups. And because by then I'd gotten every syrup under the sun, I'd done the over-the-counter ones, I'd done the NyQuil type stuff, I'd been given the narcotic syrups. Nothing was touching this cough. So from like 6 a.m. till 10 a.m. when the pharmacy opens, I'm just coughing, even though I'm exhausted and wishing I could sleep. My eye is in agony because it's not had any treatment yet. And this was really when the control was just lost. My boyfriend is on no sleep too. We drive to the pharmacy. We're literally holding each other up. I'm beyond miserable. I can barely see. By then, the right eye infection was starting to affect the left eye, even though I'd done my best to not touch and exchange bacteria between eyes. It was starting to also affect my left eye. So I was barely able to see out of both eyes from a mix of exhaustion and the infection starting in my left eye. And we get all the way to the pharmacy, and there's a long wait. And then when a technician comes to see us, she has to break the bad news that they don't have that antibiotic on site, which raised a bunch of red flags for a lot of reasons. Like, I think when you get seriously ill at a time when a lot of people are seriously ill with the same things like COVID or RSV, you realize the hard way that medications are in very short supply. And throughout this whole process through this summer, I realized basically everything I needed had already been snapped up by other people who also desperately needed those things. So even simple things like Dayquil or Robitussin or this humidifier, we couldn't find them anywhere. The breathing support devices like this, expensive, couldn't find them anywhere. And so I could barely speak because I'm still suffering from this awful tonsillitis, right? And I can barely see. And the pharmacist is like telling me, we don't know what to tell you. So I sink to the floor. I'm crying. My voice is gravelly, but if I could scream, I would have. I was just like, what do I do? What do you want me to do? I tell them my sob story about how long I've been up and I have to start this antibiotic. What do I do? And because it was prescribed by an overnight ER doctor, they can't reach him now. He's off his call. He's not like able to substitute the medicine with something else. So we went through the ringer for a while, calling up pretty much every other regional pharmacy like Walgreens, Walmart, Safeway, Rite Aid, seeing where might have that medicine in stock, where the pharmacist might be able to send the prescription to. We eventually get it sent to a Walmart, and wouldn't you know it, there's also a ton of people there just like me who've been through the ringer in the ER all night, who've needed some medicine that's not in stock and been sent there. So there's like a day-long queue to pick up anything. So it became a matter of like going with my discharge papers from the hospital to the pharmacy pickup window and like begging with whatever voice I could muster from the swollen tonsils. It was a really bad moment. And this is where I said things really, really broke down, because there's always been that part of me. I've been sick most of my life, and there's always been that part of me that it's just like, this is a really bad day. This is a really crappy time, but I'm going to fight it and I'm going to keep going because I've always been a really good advocate for myself. No one else has done it for me. It's up to me if I want to live and be happy. But I had completely was losing everything. Like I was really tired of fighting. Sleep deprivation is the worst for me. I think it's throughout this, I've learned that it's what's actually going to kill me is complications of sleep deprivation. Because by that particular moment, I hate this word, but I have to say it since I can't say the other word. I wanted to unalive myself. I really did. I thought this is going to be my last day on earth if I can't get to the bottom of this and get home and get some sleep, because I'm done. You know, it's just felt like several years of just straight pain with no remission. And that sounds ridiculous, but I think a mix of everything I'd gone through and everything I thought I didn't have to look forward to. That was a bad time. I told my mom about this time, and, she could understand how it felt after a full week like this, where it just felt like nothing was going to get better. And nothing magically did get better after that day. That day was not an epiphany. The only good takeaway was I got the eye antibiotic, and I got home and I got to take it. And then it was 105 degrees and the power went out. So there was also no sleep and no respite. And then the cough took off. I'm going to take a short break and then I'm going to tell you about that. Oh, it's a video. We are not alone. Sorry for making this so long. Obviously, there was a lot to talk about. And I'm still saying the world's shortest version of it. But this is where things got to not just I'm uncomfortable and really upset by the situation to where it became life-threatening. Okay, so the good news is I've started the antibiotic for strep throat, and I've started the antibiotic for strep eye. And I've managed to use what little voice I have to communicate that I'll need a double dose of the eye drops because it's now in both my eyes, and I can barely see out of both my eyes, but especially the right eye. So things started to feel like maybe they're going to get under control if only this cough would get under control. But because I had not been able to sleep and the cough straight up wouldn't let me, I kept trying to get more and more inventive with what do I do to get this cough under control? Because it was still a productive cough, and I had coughed up blood, which was terrifying. I'd asked my doctors, what do I do? I'm coughing up blood. They had done a chest x-ray on Sunday and confirmed I don't have pneumonia. So they said, stick with the narcotic cough syrup, try to break the cycle of coughing. And you're on the antibiotic for strep throat, which would help if you have any kind of bacterial bronchitis or borderline asthma, or not borderline asthma, borderline pneumonia going on. So I thought I'm doing everything I can, and this is just going to stop on its own like all the other bad coughs I've had with a flu or COVID in the past. It's going to stop. If only I could sleep, but it absolutely wasn't happening. So it had been a full week with micro sleep, and I mean, like looking at a wall and losing 10 minutes level tired, and trying to make coffee and putting something down and objects disappearing tired, looking all over for something that's right there, stumbling over my speech, not being able to spell, not being able to talk, couldn't think straight, couldn't do anything except be bedridden and try to sleep and not be able to stop coughing. And the cough went from coughing up blood, not small portions of blood, but whole palmfuls of blood in my tissue. Cannot show you the pictures, but it's ugly. And it started to turn into, the regular kind of phlegm and all that. And then it became, by the following week, a really dry, spastic, really terrible cough. And I had been told to take Sudafed, and that actually made matters incredibly worse because my blood pressure skyrocketed, and I wound up back in the ER with insanely high blood pressure and high pulse rate because I could barely breathe through the amount of coughing that was happening. And I still didn't know that I had RSV as well. And this is what is kind of dangerous about RSV, is that for a lot of people, even if you've been vaccinated against whooping cough like I have, it basically mimics whooping cough at all ages, where the cough is so violent and so incessant, you can't get any convalescent rest and it's not responding to anything. So I honestly don't recall how long I suffered with this without finally being given some really big steroids to help break the cycle. But I kept trying every night different ways to suppress the cough. I tried sleeping in a chair, sitting upright. I always thought if I get tired enough, I will crash out, but the cough would not relent. And then I got severe chest pain, and it turns out I tore some chest cartilage from just how hard I was coughing. And so then I'm in agony with every cough because of the torn cartilage, and it just keeps tearing. And I tried sleeping on the couch sitting upright. I tried sleeping in my bed sitting upright. My boyfriend didn't know what to do. My family didn't know what to do. No one could be around me because I'm very contagious, and I've got all sorts of gross bacteria on board. I've got strep in my eyes and my throat. I've got COVID. I had RSV yet and didn't know at that point. And around July 31st, everything culminated really, really badly because the sleep deprivation had now been going on for, I guess, maybe half a month. And I don't have kids. I don't have things keeping me awake. I have chronic fatigue syndrome. I sleep as much as possible. So this level of sleep deprivation is something that I'd never experienced before, and things got extremely out of control in my head. All I could think about was, wanting to be little again, wanting happy times back, thinking this is never going to end, feeling like it was never going to end. I started hallucinating on the worst night of it around July 31st. I was having a coughing fit, and I was trying with everything in me to avoid coughing again. And I thought there was a figure in the corner slowly making its way towards my bed, and it was going to kill me. And I realized I have to get out of my room and tell my boyfriend I just hallucinated. Because I knew it wasn't there, but I couldn't make it stop being there, I couldn't make it go away just by realizing it's not actually there. It was horrifying. And I was crying on the floor in the kitchen. I was saying, I just want this to be over. Like, if it's not going to get better, I want this to all end, even if that means I'm going to die. He was thinking we should probably call an ambulance because I was having so much trouble getting air in. The difficulty wasn't just coughing. It was that every time I tried to take a breath in like that, it felt like I was choking on soup. That was how I kept trying to describe the feeling to everybody, was that it's like when you've just choked on something terrible like alcohol or clam chowder and you can't breathe in. That's how it felt, but for weeks, and with every passing moment, worse and worse, despite everything I was doing. So we thought, we're going to have to get back to the hospital and get on some kind of breathing support. I actually need help breathing. I can't breathe on my own. So they give me rescue inhalers, which I'd never heard of before. And this is probably the only useful bit of information I can give, although I'm always afraid to provide actual medical information because it might not be the right course of treatment for everybody. But they gave me a bunch of inhalers just to open up because my airways were closing. So they gave me Alvesco and albuterol. I'm now on an extended release albuterol, and I'm taking them through a spacer. I basically developed severe reactive asthma, mainly due to RSV, they think, because RSV is more apt to cause people, especially adults, a severe prolonged bronchitis and something called reactive airway disease, which I'd never heard of before. I got too confident. I figured I would go for a walk around the apartment grounds. I started to go up a hill, and I had to sit down on a bench. This walk is a lot longer than I remember. I feel about 90. So I now have reactive airway disease, and I've developed severe reactive asthma. So I take these inhalers multiple times a day at the moment, but less and less. And I'll tell you what, it's changed me. I'll never take for granted being able to take like a breath in and not feel pain and, you know, be able to do it. Because like just because of talking this much, I'm still having problems breathing in and thinking about everything from July. July was the worst. August has been a blur of terrible. August was also terrible. But that was when things started to change, because between those inhalers and 3 courses of systemic steroid, they gave me 3 rounds of prednisone and also integrated dexamethasone steroid syrup to suppress the cough. It took 3 rounds of all those things to get it to where I'm not coughing and can actually get any sleep. And it's only been about a week since I've been able to sleep through either the night or the day or whenever I usually sleep. Now I feel like myself because it's 6 in the morning and my day is winding down because I've been up all night, because I'm nocturnal basically. But this is me, you know, this is me back, right? But I don't know what to expect. I don't know how it's going to affect the rest of my life. I don't even want to think that far yet. They've basically said you might have asthma now. They don't really know. They're thinking of repeating a lung CT and a chest X-ray. But because I've been on so much immunosuppressant to decrease the inflammation in my lungs and my bronchial airways, I'm absolutely petrified of going into a busy hospital right now, unless I have to. So I've been hiding at home as much as possible. I haven't gone in anywhere. I've been getting my groceries delivered. I've refused to go into buildings as much as possible. I've refused to be around people as much as possible. Only recently have I been able to talk without coughing, especially for any length of time. Right now, making this video is the longest I've spoken since before I got sick. So yay. But I feel like a completely different person now, because for one, I realized there's only a small handful of people who actually give a shit about me. Everyone else didn't know what to say, even though I was pouring my heart out, begging for support and reasons to feel like staying alive. Because when I say how much time was spent with seriously dark thoughts like, if this will not get better, if I'm going to have lifelong breathing problems, if that's what they're telling me is going to happen, I don't want to do it. I've always said I'm not going to be one of those inspirational stories. I just want out, because this whole summer has felt like a complete loss of control. And I'd always said, if it gets to that point where I've exhausted treatment options, if one day I have, terminal anything or something that's going to completely take away whatever quality of life I have left and make me live in the complete bubble that my pediatrician said I would have to when I was first diagnosed as immunocompromised as a baby. If I ever have to go totally into that bubble of isolation and also be physically miserable all the time and unable to sleep, which is the big one for me, unable to sleep, I don't want to be here anymore. And I got as far into those thoughts as picking up the object that I wanted to end it with. And I put it down only because my cat was crying. And I don't want anyone to find me that way. So I guess it's good that I don't live alone, or that my parents are still alive. But I wouldn't put it out of the question one day. And I don't feel bad saying that now, because I want to honestly warn everybody. That's how I feel. And like I said, it's disappointing because I've only had a handful of real friends and real family this summer. So It's a tough feeling. But the only educational takeaway that I can give beyond what we already know about COVID is that RSV, I think, pushed me farther than COVID did into a very lethal mix of severe life-threatening cough, severe difficulty breathing, severe respiratory distress, to the point where I had to be constantly measuring my oxygen saturation with this little finger oximeter and my blood pressure. They had to basically treat me like a remote hospital patient. And even though I spent August at home, I was checking in with doctors pretty much every day because they wanted to know what's going on today and what I need to watch for to come in, if I'm responding to the prednisone, what all these readings are doing. This whole thing has been like a home hospital. Every little thing was setting me off coughing. I had to deep clean the living hell out of this place, get rid of any dust, get rid of any irritants, get rid of any scents. Everything was setting off severe asthma attacks, as in terrifying attacks. Like, I would not be able to breathe in. I would take the rescue inhalers. I would wait. They wouldn't work enough. I would take the steroid syrup. It wouldn't work enough. I'm still unable to breathe a couple hours later. I take the second dose of rescue inhaler. I take the extended release albuterol, and I have to write on a sheet of paper, since I'm coughing and wheezing too much to speak. I have to write it on a sheet of paper or something to my boyfriend. If this doesn't work, we have to go to the hospital, or we have to call an ambulance. I have to get on bigger breathing treatment. And what's scary about the bigger breathing treatment is everything outside of intubation is basically like a mask with the same type of chemicals as I'm already inhaling. It's like, how much are they actually going to be able to do? So it was terrifying. And respiratory syncytial virus, like I said, I'd barely even heard about. And now I only see a handful of stories about it on the internet from people like me who got it as adults. Some of the people who've made those, health and wellness testimony videos are people who've had emphysema or have had previous struggles with chronic bronchitis or asthma. I'd never had respiratory issues like this before, so it's an all new feeling, and it is deeply, deeply depressing. Deeply. So I'd been doing anything I can to add some kind of levity to my life. But I think it's a good takeaway is just how much you can get pushed by illness. Even if you're like me and have been trying really hard to, be happy and be well and manage chronic conditions and structure your life positively, something can really, really take you out. And I have nothing but empathy for anyone who's struggled with breathing problems, asthma, RSV, COVID, or, anything in general. I don't think I lack empathy for anyone who's had a health struggle or a struggle in general. But watch out for RSV. There's the important takeaway is watch your freaking back and watch out for that cough. Because if you start to get a cough that's just not responding to anything, including what you've been given by whatever doctor, it's time to go back. I remember the first conversation of when I said, is there a stronger syrup or is there something else I can get on? And the doctor attending at that point said, oh no, we're in a rescue inhaler and steroid territory. So that was scary, very scary. Only recently have I started to get that feeling like I know what to expect in a given day and not like anything could happen. Like I'll just be exhausted and ready to pile into bed and then I'll start wheezing and choking. No, it's only been maybe a week where I don't fear that that's going to be how my day ends every single day. And where I'm like punching my pillows, angry, furious, upset, wishing for a way out. That it's been that bad. Yeah. So let's hope the fall is an uneventful mess of pumpkins and turkeys and happy cats and rain and an end to the freaking wildfire smoke that's polluting Oregon right now.